Hey there, silly story here, bringing you another silly tale for everyone to enjoy. Title: The Rebirth of a Fake. When I woke up, I didn't know who I was or even where I was. The world around me felt distant, muffled, like I was stuck underwater. I remembered the fire smoke filling my lungs, flames licking closer, the panicked heartbeat pounding in my chest as I tried to drag Sarah to safety. But that moment felt like a dream, blurred and buried under pain and exhaustion. Then I opened my eyes and saw, not my face, not me. They said I was Sarah, my best friend, but everything felt wrong. My body, my face, my voice, all of it felt foreign, as though I'd somehow crossed into a mirror version of my life. Sarah's family stood beside me, calling me their daughter, pleading for me to come back to them. And even the doctor looked at me with that same desperate hope. I wanted to scream, to tell them I wasn't Sarah, that their daughter was gone. But I could see in their faces they'd lost too much already. For reasons I couldn't explain, I played along. Maybe it was for them. Maybe it was because I didn't know where else to go or who else to be. But I also knew one thing: whoever they thought I was, it would give me a chance to escape the people who tried to destroy me. And so, I let Sarah's reflection stare back at me in the mirror, and whispered to myself, "You're free now." Then I caught a glimpse of the reflection in the bathroom mirror, my face. The cheekbone is perfect, yes, but also Sarah's terrible eyebrows. Seriously, how had I never noticed how uneven they were before? It was like her face had decided to give up on symmetry entirely. I stared at my new, not my face self, and muttered, "Well, at least I'm free. But do I have to inherit her entire beauty routine, too? I mean, was this supposed to be my life now? One bad eyebrow at a time." I sighed, looked up, and whispered, "Sarah, I'm so sorry, but these eyebrows are your problem now." Story begins. I've always been alone. Growing up in the foster system taught me that the only person I could count on was myself. Trust, luxury item, unaffordable. But I did have one constant: technology. I was practically born with a keyboard under my fingertips. By college, I'd worked my way into the world of IT, hacking into codes and firewalls that most people couldn't even begin to wrap their heads around. I had the power to control something, finally, and it was intoxicating. But then, my foster family had to go and ruin it. When I say twisted scheme, I mean it. They decided I was their golden ticket, their way out of a mountain of debt. And by way out, I mean they tried to sell me off to some 60-year-old guy who thought he could pay for a young wife. When they told me, I just stared at them, deadpan. So, I'm the family's lottery prize. Well, lucky me, one of them actually looked relieved, like I was on board. I know it sounds drastic, but... Drastic, I said, raising an eyebrow. Drastic is shaving your head. This is what's the word? Ah, yes, a felony. They tried to laugh it off, but I was already packing my stuff in my mind. There was no way I'd let myself be sold off like a designer handbag. I slipped out that night, taking only the essentials: laptop, charger, a half-eaten granola bar, and, most importantly, my sense of dignity. As I vanished into the city, I looked back one last time, muttering, "Good luck with your debt, suckers." Since then, I've become pretty good at making myself invisible. Just another face in the crowd. Another nobody who's better at disappearing than Houdini. It's funny. They wanted to make a quick buck, and instead, they got to watch their golden ticket walk off with nothing but a Wi-Fi connection and an attitude. But my foster family didn't give up so easily. They needed money, and if they couldn't get it by selling me, they'd find another way. And that's how Sarah, my best friend, ended up paying the price. When I heard that my foster family had kidnapped Sarah, dread settled like ice in my veins. They'd taken her to hold her for ransom, betting on her CEO husband, Drake, to pay them off. But I knew my foster family, they were capable of anything. Hurting her wouldn't make them hesitate, especially if they thought it might get them what they wanted. For weeks, I'd been hiding in the shadows of the city, just a face in the crowd, barely surviving by keeping a low profile. But this was a line I couldn't ignore. Sarah was my only friend, my tether to a life that felt even remotely normal. If she was in danger, hiding wasn't an option anymore. It didn't take long for them to track me down after I surfaced, though. They found me in a deserted alley and dragged me, kicking and struggling, to some grimy, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The air inside was stale and heavy, thick with the scent of mold and rust. They shoved me to the floor, tied my hands behind my back, and didn't even bother to explain. I knew better than to expect mercy from them. They made it clear what they wanted: access to Drake. They thought I might know where he was hiding assets, or maybe even how to reach him directly. I didn't, but they wouldn't take my word for it. "Tell us where Drake is hiding his money," one of them snarled, pacing in front of me, his patience wearing thin. "Sure thing," I replied, brightening up. "Just grab me a map, a red marker, and a couple of $100 million, and we'll be in business." He stopped, blinked, clearly confused. "You think this is funny?" "No, but I figure if I'm going to get roughed up, I might as well enjoy the customer service." I gave him a crooked grin. 1 star on Yelp, by the way. Terrible ambiance. One of my foster brothers scoffed, crouching down to look me dead in the eyes. "Liar. You're her best friend, aren't you?" "Her best friend?" I raised an eyebrow. "Buddy, best friends don't come with bank account details. It's like Rule 1. The fuse was lit. The questioning turned into something uglier, something sharper. They never needed much of an excuse to hurt me. And now that I was actively defying them, they seemed almost pleased to take out their frustrations. As the blows rained down, I kept up the commentary. "Oh, a left hook? Going old school, I see. Nice." A harder blow landed, and I let out a groan. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Drake's money, it's hidden in." I leaned in, mock whispering, "the offshore account of none of your business." They didn't appreciate my humor, but I figured if I was going down, I'd go down with my dignity and my sense of humor intact. My refusal lit a fuse in him, and the questioning turned into something uglier, something sharper. They'd never needed much of an excuse to hurt me, and now that I was actively defying them, they seemed almost pleased to take out their frustrations. Each blow was a twisted reminder of how little I'd mattered to these people, but I gritted my teeth and held my ground. If I was going down, I was going down with my integrity intact. Just as I started piecing together a plan to escape, a loud crack echoed through the warehouse, followed by the distant roar of flames. It took a moment to register, but I smelled it then, the sharp, acrid scent of smoke. A fire had started somewhere close, and it was spreading quickly. Panic shot through the group, their faces blanching as they glanced toward the back of the warehouse. Flames danced in the distance, growing faster than I would have thought possible. They didn't care about me or Sarah anymore. They just wanted out. One by one, they bolted, abandoning us both to the encroaching inferno. I struggled against my bindings, my wrists raw as I fought to free myself. The fire was relentless, greedily devouring everything in its path. My vision blurred as the smoke thickened, and I coughed, my lungs burning. I forced myself to keep moving, desperate to reach Sarah before it was too late. There she was, slumped over in the corner, barely conscious. I stumbled toward her, my arms outstretched, calling her name through the roar of the flames. She stirred, but she looked dazed, her eyes struggling to focus. "Sarah!" I shouted, my voice ragged. "Come on, we have to move." But she barely reacted, and I could feel my own strength waning. The heat was unbearable, searing my skin even from a distance. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if my legs were made of lead. I grasped her arm, trying to pull her up, but my vision was fading fast, the world dissolving into a hazy darkness. As the fire closed in around us, swallowing the warehouse, I felt my grip on Sarah slip. My legs gave out, and I collapsed beside her, my consciousness slipping away in the thick, suffocating smoke. My last thought, just before everything went black, was a stubborn refusal to let it end like this. But the fire didn't care about my resolve. It was merciless, devouring every inch of that cursed place, leaving nothing but charred remains in its wake. When I woke up, everything was a blur. My face was covered in bandages, and pain throbbed with every heartbeat. The doctors whispered around me, talking about severe burns and surgery. But that wasn't the worst of it. I learned later that Sarah's parents had been told I was her. They thought I was their daughter. They decided to have my face reconstructed to look like her. It was like stepping into a nightmare. I couldn't recognize myself. I didn't look like Aubrey anymore. I looked like Sarah, That was the first moment I realized I'd lost everything: my name, my face, my past. I was stuck in a stranger's body, in a stranger's life. I was trapped in a lie. And that's when I realized something truly bizarre. I had to start Googling myself. Because apparently, I didn't just have to live in her world now. I had to understand her. I mean, I am her best friend, but I don't entirely know her. We've just met recently, and got along really well. The next thing I know, we are already calling each other bestie. I didn't know her favorite color, her childhood crush, or how she took her coffee. Her life was like reading a biography of a stranger. Except the stranger was me. And all I could think was, this is going to be awkward next time I have to sit down and explain to people that, no, I'm not Sarah, I just happen to have her face and her childhood nickname. When I woke from the surgery, there was a man at my bedside. Drake, Sarah's husband. He looked at me with such relief, such love, that I almost choked on the words I wanted to say. I wanted to scream, to tell him the truth. But I stopped myself. If I played along, maybe I could escape my old life, escape the shadows of my foster family, and all the pain they'd caused me. So I pretended. I smiled, forced myself to learn every corner of Sarah's world, every detail of her life. I became Sarah, at least to everyone else. Drake saw me as his wife, and I had to admit, sometimes it was easy to slip into the role. I was free from my past. No one knew I was Aubrey Smith, the girl they'd abandoned to burn. And yet, there was a part of me I refused to let go. The hacker in me never truly left. In the dead of night, I'd return to my screens, slipping into the digital world, using my skills to keep myself safe. I thought I could live like that indefinitely, a double life, balancing the illusion with the truth. But illusions never last. One day, the real Sarah came back. Sarah was furious, and I could hardly blame her. She accused me of being a kidnapper, an imposter, and a thief. Her words cut deep, but nothing hurt as much as the look on Drake's face. I thought he might defend me, might see through the anger and remember all I'd done to survive. But no, he believed her without hesitation. In that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to protect Sarah's life, I would always be the outsider, the imposter. You know, it's funny. No one ever tells you that getting a new life is basically like getting a free trial of a Netflix subscription. Except you don't know how to cancel when it turns into a drama series you definitely didn't sign up for. First, it's yay, new life. Then, it's wait, I'm stuck in the wrong show now, and I don't even know what my role is. They turned on me and sent me to prison, branding me a criminal. Abandoned and alone, I spent months in a cell, nursing a bitterness that grew with every day. And then, one night, my life ended in the darkness of that prison cell. Or at least it should have. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hospital bed, wrapped in the same bandages, staring at the same white ceiling. For a moment, I thought it was some kind of twisted nightmare. But no, it was real. Somehow, I'd been given another chance, a chance to rewrite everything. I decided to play along, pretending to still be in a coma for a day, and bribing the doctor to keep my condition hidden from Sarah's family. It gave me time to think, to plan my escape from this life they'd thrust upon me. A week later, the door creaked open, and there stood Drake, his face breaking into a relieved smile. "Sarah," he said, stepping forward with a mix of joy and concern. I blinked a few times, pretending to regain consciousness like some soap opera star in a hospital bed. "Oh, hey, Drake, was it?" He stared at me like I was a confused puppy. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay?" I nodded, my bandages crinkling. Yeah, I'm fine. But could you, maybe, order some fries or something? You know, something not hospital food, because as much as I love the mystery meat stew, I think I'm going to pass." He chuckled. "You're a funny one, Sarah. We missed you. Missed me. Buddy, you haven't seen my true potential yet," I thought. But I kept it to myself, flashing a fake smile. Because right now, my only job was playing the part until I could pull off my greatest escape plan. Step 1, order fries. Step 2, freedom. Then one night, I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift as I prepared to say the truth. "Drake," I said, voice steady, "I'm not Sarah." His smile froze, replaced by utter confusion. What are you talking about?" I tried not to laugh. I'm not Sarah, I repeated, savoring every word. My name is Aubrey. Sarah's gone. I was caught in that fire trying to save her. And your family mistook me for her. They gave me her face. Drake's face did the strange thing like he was trying to process, but kept hitting a wall. This is insane. Sarah, you're just confused. It's the coma you need rest. Oh, rest sounds great, actually, I interrupted. But you might want to look at this first. I slid a note across the side table with a link scribbled on it. This has everything. I'd been investigating my foster family for months, and they were behind the kidnapping. They wanted ransom money to pay off their debts. They're still out there, plotting away. He looked at the note like it was cursed, his hand hovering as if it might explode. And what exactly is this supposed to prove? Everything. I leaned in, trying not to smirk. Names, locations, everything. You don't have to worry about me playing pretend anymore. Drake's face went through a cycle of emotions, finally landing on a kind of panicked desperation. You can't just walk away, he said, his voice cracking. If you're not Sarah, then who are you to me? A ghost, I said, allowing a wry smile to touch my lips. One that's ready to haunt someone else. Just think of me as Sarah 2.0. But without the software updates. Goodbye, Drake. I turned to leave, and as I reached the door, I tossed over my shoulder. Oh, and please, send my compliments to my doctor for the excellent face swab. He really nailed the cheekbones. I'm just not a fan of the eyebrows. Drake was speechless, and with that, I walked out of the room, out of that life, and out of Sarah's shadow without a single backward glance. I left everything behind and moved to a small seaside town where I could finally be myself. No lies, no stolen identity, just me. My only companion was my Shih Tzu, a fierce little thing with the heart of a lion. With him by my side, I finally felt at peace. I kept hacking, but this time it was on my terms. I was free to live the life I wanted. Months later, Drake found me. He confessed he'd discovered Sarah's infidelity during the year I'd been in a coma, and that he'd felt something for me all along. But I wasn't buying it. I remembered his betrayal, his willingness to throw me to the wolves. I actually laughed when he said he wanted a fresh start. My voice went cold. You saw what you wanted to see, Drake. Nothing more. I walked over to the table and picked up my gun. It's not real, though. Holding it loosely, just enough to watch him tense up. I didn't aim it directly, but he got the message. Now, I said, letting a slow smile creep onto my face, I think it's time you go. He looked like he might argue, but then my Shih Tzu Bubbles let out a low growl, teeth bared, fur bristling like he thought he was some kind of Rottweiler. Drake's eyes went wide, taking in all 6 ferocious pounds of him. You wouldn't, he stammered, looking between me and the little ball of fury snapping at his heels. Oh, I definitely would, I replied, with a calm nod toward the door. Bubbles here. He's vicious. He'll give you at least 2 ankle nips, if you're lucky. Drake took a nervous step back, clearly torn between disbelief and sheer terror. That dog, can't you just— Oh, I'd run if I were you, I interrupted, giving Bubbles a scratch behind the ears. This guy, he's got no mercy. Ask the mailman, or the pizza delivery guy. Or, actually, just go. Drake, still eyeing Bubbles like he was a miniature assassin, took one last look at me, and stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet as he backed down the path. I shut the door behind him, locking it tight and hearing Bubbles let out a satisfied snort. Well done, guard dog, I said, scooping him up. He yawned, clearly proud of his work. Life in the seaside town was blissfully simple after that. Mornings spent on the beach with my dog, afternoons hacking into high-security systems for clients who needed help, and evenings watching the sun sink into the ocean. It was quiet. Safe. I could breathe here, without anyone else's expectations or deceit hanging over me. But as much as I wanted to believe I'd left my past behind, shadows have a way of creeping back in. One night, as I was working on a freelance project, I stumbled across a familiar name on the deep web. My heart sank. My foster family's name appeared on a private forum, linked to posts about shady dealings and desperate debts. They were tangled up in crime once again. But this time, the message was different. This time, they were looking for someone tracking someone down. A shiver ran through me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I muttered, "Looking for me, are you?" Wow, flattered, and after all these years, too. My Shih Tzu, Bubbles, looked up, sensing my tension, his head cocked to the side. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, reaching down to pet him. "Your mom's got this. I'm not going anywhere." As I scratched his ears, he gave me a yawn that clearly said, "Can we maybe just watch Netflix instead?" I grinned and shook my head. "Nope, not tonight, Bubbles. Tonight we become super spies." I opened a new window, typing quickly as I set up a fresh online identity, a ghost in the machine. "All right," I muttered, cracking my knuckles. "Let's play. You want to track someone? Try me." I dove deep into the networks my foster family frequented, setting traps, creating false trails, and feeding them the most ridiculous misinformation. "Oops," I said with a mock gasp. "Looks like I'm hiding out in a circus in Venice. Oh, or maybe I'm a llama farmer in Peru now." I chuckled to myself, thinking of them trying to follow these wild leads. Bubbles gave me a long, unimpressed stare, and I ruffled his fur. "What? I'm having fun." I felt a strange satisfaction, like I was finally getting the upper hand in a game they'd forced me into long ago. My old self might have wanted revenge, but now, all I wanted was to be safe, invisible, untouchable. I glanced down at Bubbles, who was half asleep by now. "I think we'll call this one : Operation Ghost Llama." He let out a sleepy snort, and I smiled, settling back into my chair with newfound confidence. "Let's see who gets the upper hand this time," I whispered. Spoiler alert, it's not them. One night, as I sifted through their data, I discovered something unexpected. A massive, dark network, with connections reaching far beyond my foster family. They were a small piece in a much larger organization, a syndicate trafficking people, information, and power across the globe. And as terrifying as it was, I realized I had the skills and the drive to dismantle it from the inside. It started small. A bank account emptied here, a corrupted file there. Each move chipped away at the syndicate's resources and infrastructure. They had no idea who was behind it. No clue that the faceless hacker hitting them where it hurt most was the very girl they'd left for dead. I worked from the shadows, careful to cover my tracks, knowing that one wrong move could expose me. But with each successful strike, I felt a sense of purpose and power I'd never experienced before. And then, one night, I received a message. The sender was anonymous, their words cryptic but familiar. It was Drake. He had somehow pieced together the puzzle and realized that I was the one orchestrating the takedown of the syndicate. The message read, "Stop this. You're playing with fire, and you'll get burned. Walk away while you still can." I rolled my eyes. "Wow, Drake, really? Did you copy-paste that from a bad action movie?" I muttered, typing back a response. "Thanks for the advice, but I'm allergic to unsolicited life tips. Pretty sure I'm going to ignore it." Drake's response came quickly. "I'm serious. Stop this before it gets you killed." I scoffed. "Oh, Drake, didn't know you cared? But I'm pretty sure you're not worried about my safety, just your own interests. Sorry to disappoint." His next message was less subtle. "This isn't a game." I laughed out loud, then stopped playing checkers. "Drake, because I'm out here playing chess." Drake's warning only fueled my resolve. I doubled down, infiltrating deeper, targeting every piece of the syndicate's network that I could find. I knew he was watching, trying to predict my next move, but he'd underestimated my determination. I had rebuilt myself from the ashes twice before. There was nothing they could do that I hadn't already survived. As I prepared for my next strike, I sent Drake one last message. "Don't worry about me. I've got SPF 100 for that fire you mentioned. Enjoy the show." Then, the syndicate struck back. I returned home one night to find my dog missing. A chilling message left on my computer screen. "This ends now, Aubrey." In that moment, my fear vanished, replaced by a cold, focused rage. I was done running, done hiding. I contacted Drake one last time, baiting him into revealing his connection to the syndicate. He thought he could talk his way out, but I had him cornered. I had all the evidence of his involvement, the money trails, the secret meetings. It was time to expose the syndicate for what they were, and Drake would go down with them. With the evidence compiled, I went public. It was a risky move, but I'd spent years perfecting my digital skills, and I knew how to keep myself safe in the chaos that followed. News outlets picked up the story, exposing the syndicate's crimes, and law enforcement agencies launched investigations that rippled through their network. Drake was arrested within days, along with my foster family and countless others. The syndicate crumbled, their power dismantled piece by piece, and as they fell, I felt the weight of my past finally lift from my shoulders. I had faced the shadows that haunted me and turned them into ashes. Months passed, and life returned to its quiet rhythm. My dog was safe again, my home undisturbed. The beach stretched endlessly before me, an unbroken horizon of freedom and possibility. I had no need to look over my shoulder, no need to hide from my past. I had faced it all, torn it down, and come out on the other side stronger than ever. The days drifted by, each one blending seamlessly into the next. Life here was simple, tranquil, a far cry from the chaos I'd once known. I spent mornings with my dog by the sea, letting him chase waves and bark at seagulls. In the afternoons, I'd settle by my computer to work on freelance projects that challenged my mind, but didn't compromise my peace. I'd left hacking behind in any formal sense, but the skills I had honed over the years were still with me. Now, they were a tool to support myself, not a weapon for survival. And while my past life felt distant, it was still there, woven into the fabric of who I'd become. The scars, both visible and hidden, served as reminders not of pain, but of resilience. I had learned to survive the worst and build a life that was truly mine. Months later, I thought I'd put everything behind me. I was just another person in a small coastal town, with no ties to the powerful or corrupt. But one evening, as I was locking up, I noticed a shadow lingering outside my door. At first, I tensed, ready for a fight, but as the figure stepped into the light, I recognized the face. It was Sarah, her real face. I hadn't expected to see her again. The last I'd heard, she had disappeared after Drake's arrest, her name lost in the chaos that followed the syndicate's exposure. And yet, here she was, looking older, wearier, but with a spark of resolve in her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I blinked. "Depends. You planning to haunt me? Because I'm not exactly equipped for an exorcism." She cracked a smile, the first one I'd ever seen on her face. "Not tonight, I promise." I let her in, and we sat down with cups of tea, the silence between us thick and awkward. Finally, she broke it. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her gaze serious. "You destroyed them, tore down the people who used both of us. That's something I never could have done." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, I had help, mostly from coffee and Bubbles," I said, glancing at my Shih Tzu, who was happily gnawing on a chew toy, blissfully unaware of the conversation. Sarah's lips twitched. Bubbles was the muscle. "Oh, absolutely. Every time I was ready to quit, he'd give me a look that said, 'Are you really going to let them win?'" I grinned, and she actually laughed. Her laughter faded, and she looked down, gathering her thoughts. "After Drake was arrested, I didn't know who I was anymore. You forcing my hand, well, it made me confront everything I'd ignored. I found myself again because of it." I took a sip of my tea, feeling an unexpected sense of warmth. "I didn't set out to help anyone but myself," I admitted, "but I'm glad it did. Sometimes we need a little chaos to find our footing." She nodded, smiling thoughtfully. "And a few threats from a 6-pound Shih Tzu, apparently. Hey, don't underestimate him. He may be small, but he's scrappy." I winked, and she laughed again. As Sarah stood to leave, she hesitated, then reached out, squeezing my hand. "You gave me a life I didn't know I needed," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you for everything." I watched her walk away, a strange sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in ages, it felt like I was truly free. Free from my past, and free to move forward. After closing the door, I looked at Bubbles, who was watching me with an unimpressed expression. "Guess we're done with all that spy stuff, huh?" I sighed. Bubbles yawned dramatically. Yeah, I muttered, scratching his head. "But just between us, you're still the muscle." With Sarah's visit, it felt as though the final threads of my past had loosened, untangled, and drifted away. I had faced every ghost, conquered every fear, and built a life beyond the wreckage of who I used to be. Now I could let go. I could look forward, truly unburdened, Life moved forward, like the steady rhythm of the tides. Each day was a new beginning, unmarked by the past, but enriched by all I had endured. I found joy in the small things, my dog's playful bark, the salty sea breeze, and the quiet fulfillment of a day's work done for no one but myself. I had become the architect of my own life, a life built on my own terms, free from anyone's control. Yet, as peaceful as my days had become, I felt a stirring deep inside. Maybe it was the hacker in me, the part that craved puzzles and challenges, that didn't want to settle entirely into stillness. I started to wonder if there were ways I could use my skills for something bigger, ways to help others who found themselves trapped, voiceless, or controlled, as I once had been. So I began reaching out, anonymously, to communities of people whose stories mirrored parts of my own. Women fleeing abusive relationships, young people escaping trafficking rings, families trying to expose corrupt systems that had taken advantage of them. I stayed a faceless force on the web, exposing secrets, leaking information, and offering safety through technology to those who needed it. I took on a new name, one that spoke of my journey, a name only known to those I helped. In these communities, I became a kind of myth, a legend whispered between the vulnerable and the resilient. I was the girl who had come back from the dead, not once, but twice, to become a force for those who couldn't fight for themselves. One evening, as I sat by the fire in my little seaside cottage, I received a message on my secure line. It was from a mother I'd helped months ago. She had escaped a criminal ring with her child, thanks to my interventions, and had been on the run, fearing for her life. Now, she was safe in a new home, and wrote to thank me, her words carrying a warmth that caught me off guard. "You gave me a chance to be free," she wrote, "to live a life without fear. I don't know who you are, but I believe you must have been through the same things to understand how much this means. You are a light in the darkest places." I couldn't help smiling. A light in the darkest places. Who would have thought? I started typing a response. "Glad I could help," I wrote. Then, with a bit of humor, I added, "P.S. Don't go starting any criminal hacking ventures on your own. I'm not offering tech support." She responded instantly with a laughing emoji. "You're funny," she replied, "but also thank you." "Really? You saved us." I leaned back in my chair, chuckling. Bubbles trotted over, looking at me with his big, expectant eyes. "All right, Bubbles," I muttered, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "Looks like I'm a vigilante tech hero now. No capes though, okay?" He just gave me a look as if to say, "I never asked for this life." I raised an imaginary glass to the screen, to helping people and staying off the grid, and to Bubbles, the true hero of the operation. Bubbles gave a huff, curling up by the fire as if to say, "Fine, but I expect extra treats for this." With a grin, I settled back into my chair, ready to face whatever shadows needed a little light. Her words stayed with me, lingering in the quiet moments, filling me with a strange, newfound peace. I realized that my journey, though born of pain and struggle, had given me strength and purpose that could reach far beyond my own life. I had become a light, not just for myself, but for others still finding their way out of the shadows. And as I closed my laptop and stepped outside, feeling the cool sand beneath my feet and hearing the waves crash against the shore, I knew that I had finally come full circle. I was not just a survivor, I was someone who had rebuilt herself, found meaning, and had become a force that would never again be silenced or controlled. The future was unknown, and that was the beauty of it. For the first time in my life, I embraced the uncertainty, knowing that whatever path I took, I would walk it in freedom, with courage, and without regret. The world had taught me resilience, and now, in my quiet life by the sea, I found myself ready for more. I had stepped into a new purpose, becoming a protector for others who were once where I had been lost, isolated, and without options. I became a silent guardian on the internet, using my hacking skills as a force for good, a shadow that dismantled the darkness one piece at a time. One morning, as the sun rose over the water, I felt a spark of inspiration take hold. What if my skills, my knowledge, could reach even further? What if I could train others, those whose stories and strengths mirrored my own? I began drafting a plan in the quiet of my home, working late into the nights, my dog curled up by my feet. It was an idea as ambitious as it was daring, to create a network, a digital sanctuary where those in need could find resources, support, and training in the very skills that had set me free. I called it Rebirth, an anonymous platform designed to empower those on the run, those rebuilding, those seeking a way to fight back. It was a place where survivors could learn to defend themselves in a digital world, to create new identities, to erase dangerous traces of the past, and to harness the skills that would ensure no one could control them again. I worked tirelessly to make Rebirth impenetrable, safe, a fortress for those who needed it most. I vetted each new member carefully, ensuring their safety as well as the integrity of the network. Soon, people from across the world began joining, those escaping oppressive governments, whistleblowers who feared retaliation, victims of trafficking, and people simply seeking a fresh start. Here's an engaging version with some humor added. One day, a message appeared in the inbox of Rebirth. It was from Sarah. Somehow, she traced the network back to me, reaching out as an ally rather than a stranger. Her message was brief, but surprising. "I know who you are," she wrote, "and for once, I'm not here to cause trouble. I want to help." I raised an eyebrow, muttering to myself, "Sure, because that's exactly what I need. Partners who track me down." Bubbles gave me a judgmental look, as if to say, "You knew this was coming." Apparently, Sarah had spent the past months advocating for those who couldn't speak for themselves, using her influence to protect women and children fleeing abusive situations. She proposed we join forces, combining her public work with my underground skills to create a network that could fight on both fronts. "Well," I said, half to myself and half to Bubbles, "looks like we're going to be partners." Bubbles gave a huff, lying down with a sigh, as if he already knew he'd be dragged into it. Working with Sarah was an unexpected turn. Our partnership started cautiously. She'd give me status updates, and I'd send her data or contacts. Over time, we learned to trust each other. I found myself respecting her determination and was surprised by how sincere she was about the cause. Slowly, Rebirth grew, bridging digital safety with real, tangible protection. One night, Sarah and I were on a video call, both of us exhausted after hours of planning, and I finally broke the silence. "Never thought I'd be playing secret superhero with you of all people." Sarah laughed, raising her tea mug. "Hey, you could do worse." I smirked. "Yeah, just don't get any ideas about matching capes." "Blower, please," she said, rolling her eyes. "That's clearly Bubbles' job." As if on cue, Bubbles perked up and gave a soft ruff, looking almost offended at the thought of wearing a cape. "See," I said, scratching his ears. "No capes for this team." Over the months, Rebirth became something bigger than I'd ever imagined, a symbol for those who'd been silenced, hurt, or forgotten. It empowered them to rise again, stronger, as their own protectors. I found satisfaction in my quiet life by the sea, and in knowing that Rebirth was creating a ripple effect of resilience. Every morning, Bubbles and I walked along the shore. He was older now, moving a bit slower, but his spirit was as lively as ever. One day, as we watched the sunrise, I looked down at him, grinning. "All right, Bubbles. What do you think? Should we go full-on vigilante? Maybe make Rebirth a proper League of Heroes?" He looked up, unimpressed, then promptly plopped down in the sand for a nap. "Figures," I laughed, patting his head. "Guess you're just here for moral support." As we headed back to the cottage, my mind buzzed with new ideas for Rebirth's future. I didn't want fame or recognition, just to leave the world a little brighter. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Years passed, and my life continued on its quiet, powerful path. I had no need to look back. I was living proof that strength could come from the most broken places, that light could emerge from the deepest darkness. And Rebirth carried on as well, evolving with each passing year, with every new member who joined, each one a beacon of hope. I saw the network grow, transform, and touch lives in ways I could have never imagined. One evening, as I stood on the beach, gazing at the horizon with the sun dipping low and casting the perfect golden light, I let the weight of everything I had built and survived sink in. It was a cinematic moment, if ever there was one, the kind they'd play in slow motion with dramatic music swelling in the background. I felt the weight of everything I had built and survived. I was no longer haunted by the past, no longer driven by the need to prove myself or escape. I was content, knowing I had created something that would live on beyond me, something powerful and enduring. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling truly content. For once, I wasn't haunted by the past or consumed by the need to run. I created something that would live on. Something powerful, something. And then, out of nowhere, Bubbles, the fearless little Shih Tzu who'd been with me through it all, decided this was the moment to chase a seagull. He tore off down the beach, barking like he was some grand warrior ready to take on the entire bird population of the coast. I laughed, shaking my head as the dramatic music in my head fizzled out. I called after him, "Bubbles, come on. I'm having a profound moment here." But Bubbles wasn't having it. He was too busy defending my honor against that seagull, which was now swooping down, taunting him. I watched my little warrior with a grin, realizing that in all my careful planning, I'd forgotten to plan for moments like this, the little, ridiculous, beautiful interruptions in life. As he finally trotted back, looking utterly proud of himself, I picked him up, chuckling. "Guess I'm not the only protector on this beach, huh?" He gave me a sloppy, sand-coated lick on the nose, and with that, I realized, sometimes life is about the big moments, and sometimes it's about the ridiculous little ones. Both are worth holding on to. In that moment, I realized I had found not just freedom, but purpose, and the promise of a tomorrow built on my own terms. Whatever came next, I knew I was ready. I was more than a survivor. I was a protector, a force for change, a woman who had reshaped her life, and, in doing so, had helped countless others find their own path to freedom. And as I gazed out at the endless sea, I knew that my journey, though winding, had brought me right where I was meant to be. Story ends. Thanks for listening. Make sure to visit our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, show some love by hitting like, sharing it with someone you know, and subscribing so you can be part of this channel's journey. See you again for another silly story.